Hello everybody and welcome to Alternative Interactions. I'm Gary. Thank you for joining me again. Please like, share and subscribe. It really does help the channel grow and I really do appreciate all your support. It's amazing. Thank you very much. So today it's kind of an extension of the Matrix Mindfulness season or series I'm going to be doing that links in really to the Fibonacci and Chris code work I've done, and I'm going to try and link it all in at some point in the future, just so you can really get a good idea of how linked in everything really is. Nothing is in isolation in this realm. Everything is connected like a big spider's web. And so to try and get your head around the entirety of the spider's web in one go is impossible. It just can't be done. But what you can do is take little bits of it and try and understand or get an understanding of those, or awareness of those bits of the spider's web, and eventually you get a few aha moments, and so once you get those aha moments, it then allows you to put more and more pieces of the puzzle together. I have been looking at some stuff on atoms and protons and photons and all sorts of crazy stuff recently, as well as a bigger project. Just a little bit of an update on that. The bigger project I'm doing, which is based around Janus, has really taken me down some very interesting rabbit holes, and I will not be ready to produce that in its entirety for some time, because I've still got a lot of work to do. I mean, pages and pages of research, and for me, I very rarely, if ever, do any research in pages. It's all up here, so it kind of explains the complexity of what I'm looking at, and so trying to get that across is very difficult, which is why I've decided to go back to the Matrix Mindfulness, because I think it'll help set that up, if that makes sense. And so we'll have a basis, a grounding of where we are. So that's enough babble for me. And so today I want to look at what is the realm's purpose. Not our purpose, but the realm in which we live in. Now, in my series Flat, Round or Neither, I've looked at whether we're in a round world, a flat world, or neither. And I am firmly of the opinion, from all the research I've done, that we are in actual fact inside a toroidal field of consciousness, a realm, a matrix, for many of you, if that's an easier way to explain it, a holographic universe in fact. And by holographic, an example I've given many times, but in Star Trek they have a holodeck, and they can program the holodeck to create any scenario they want. One of the films, or one of the programs I saw, I think they were rock climbing, and it could have even been the start of the film where this guy's climbing up the side of a mountain, and he's got all the jeopardy in the world. I mean, he has the fear of heights, there's birds flying around him, the full works. He really is feeling it, he's living it, he's inside this holodeck, and he, for want of a better way, can't differentiate. There's no difference between reality and non-reality in this place. And so he's climbing, and it's all getting all quite tense and quite, wow. And then he gets called away, and the next thing he's just standing on the floor inside a room that had been the projection of the holographic that he had been able to interact with physically as well as mentally. And for me, that was at the time, it was like okay, that's very interesting, but it didn't really make a lot of sense. But now it does, because what they were showing us was actually the Matrix and the reality of where we live, or what we live in fact. So I've shown you on, I'm not going to do any slides today, it's just a chat. I've shown you on previous many previous videos, the toroidal field, and how I believe we're inside a big toroidal field of consciousness that has multiple layers or levels within it. And within these levels, we're stuck in one of them. And for argument's sake and for language purposes that we all understand, we could say currently we're in the 3D level, the 3D realm of consciousness within the toroidal field. And I would say everybody that's watching this has got aspirations to go to 4 or 5D. Now, I personally don't really see a difference between 4 and 5D. They're just words or a label, because I don't think that anything of consciousness really needs labeling. You just go and you just do it, a bit like how a butterfly goes from a caterpillar to the pupa stage to becoming a butterfly. It just did it. It's just natural, and you just do it. And the butterfly doesn't need to label it and doesn't need to overthink it. It just does. And so for me, I see it as a just does. It's part of the natural growth of the spiritual being that we are, to want to take this journey. And those that don't want to take the journey, that's fine, because that's their choice, or that's why they came here in the first place, because they weren't ready to play the game, as it were. Something I was watching recently, Quantum Businessman, I believe, and he was showing it as a game. He was describing it as a computer game. And again, that I have seen that as well. I mean, my son is a gamer, I'm not. But when we look at computer games, we see a world, and we're the observer, pulling the strings more so than we would be potentially. But we are in a computer game inside a computer game when playing that computer game, fundamentally, which sounds a bit crazy, but it's true. So I think I need to expand on that one a bit, because this is something that when I first got my head around the holographic nature of the realm, the matrix, it was very interesting that I also believe that there's not a finite amount of energy. So what do I mean by that? So one of many years ago, I met a very nice gentleman, and he was well on his journey. Don't get me wrong, but he hadn't quite got his head round the holographic nature of the realm, and I had kind of just about got my head round it. To be fair, I wasn't as au fait as I am now, but I had a pretty good handle on it, and he was very challenging in what the questions he was coming back with, and I really enjoyed that, because it really made me think, and I had to really think about the answers I gave him, to be sure about my understanding and how I stood in my own power of where we are, which was a very interesting concept in itself. But so thank you, John. So the discussion was that we're in a matrix, and like a computer game, we only see what the screen shows us. As in, you're watching me inside this box, a screen, and you can only see this entirety. Oh, the camera's gone again. Sorry, better not do that again. You can only see the screen. So if you took it as my reality currently, my reality is inside a box, and what's behind me is a screen. So my question to you would be, what is behind the screen? Because my answer would be nothing. Yeah, nothing. I have the perception of the room I know behind me, and I can remember what it looks like. I know what it looks like. But at this current time, as there is nobody behind me, there's nobody else in this room, what's behind this screen does not exist. There's nothing there. Now, you're going to go, well, that's absolutely crazy, that doesn't make sense. But when we go back to my description of the double-slit experiment, particle matter, protons, photons, atoms, whatever you want to call it, makes no difference, really. Although they are different and they all connect into each other, they're all fundamentally waveforms or derivatives of the same kind of thing. So we're going to call them particle matter, or call it particle matter. And so when particle matter is observed, it creates a form. So I'm looking at a camera talking to you guys, and I can see what's behind me. And because I can see what's behind me, and I know what I've put up is a screen with a Flammarion on, that's what I'm going to see. And the particles, the particle matter will create that reality, and that's solid, because that is my expectation. That's what I expect to see. That's what's been created. But behind that, even though I know what's there, there's no need to have that thing there, the rest of the room there, because there's nobody watching it, nobody observing it. And it's only when you walk round the corner of the screen would the particle matter form into the solid expectation of what you're seeing. Yeah, I know. That's quite a big one. So you can only see through your eyes. Your eyes are the screen. You only have a certain amount of vision, and then it blurs off. Now, isn't it interesting how it blurs off? So we have our focal point, and then we have a blurring off where it gets fuzzier and fuzzier and fuzzier to the point where we can't see anything else. And if you're aware of it and you really try and look without looking at the fuzziness, we know what's there, but the shape is starting to distort slightly. There's no clarity there. And so this is the bleed off, or the pixelization of this part of what you're seeing. So it's a pixelization. So this is very clear, but this stage here is all pixelated, and it's blurring away, and it's slowly going. And then beyond that, you can't see anything, because there isn't anything there. There's only something there when there's somebody else with you who's observing that, and then the realm will create that. So when you get taken into a room for the first time, there are certain energy frequencies, like a protocol, a ghost protocol almost, a residue of what is in there, because the computer knows what's in there. The realm, the consciousness, the collective consciousness of the holographic toroidal field knows exactly what should be there, is in there. So when you walk into that room, it then creates what the collective consciousness believes should be there, and you observe what has already been observed and created. Does that make sense? This is quite a deep one to get your head around, and obviously this made quite a conversation. So the only thing that is real, that we perceive as reality, is what we actually see in the now moment. And the now moment is the only thing that's actually created to give us the perception of reality. And our memories and our mind will create the rest of that. But if you really think about it, it's our knowing. I mean, I know that outside my car sat there. But if there's nobody about, no one to see that, that won't actually physically be there. Just like a computer game. The program will be there within the computer game. So I'll say Grand Theft Auto. I've never really played the game, but I understand the principles of it, where you can drive a car through the city and do all sorts of quite foul things, quite basically. But you can drive that car in the computer game, get out of it, go into a shop, or do whatever you want to do, and you can come back out of that shop and your car will still be there. But within the computer game, when you went into the shop, that car was no longer there within the game. It's only when you came back out in your vision to see it that the car was then remanifested or recreated by the computer game to show that the car was there. But you knew that when you got out of that car and went into the shop, that the car was there, and so did the computer game. And so you were creating the fact in your head that your car was there. Now, I know that sounds strange, but it's exactly the same when we go shopping. There's no difference whatsoever. When we go shopping, we drive our car to the front of the shop. And again, I've talked about this before in my Mindful Mate. We manifest our parking space. I want the space right in the door. I want a space right in the door. Nice easy access, nice easy swing in, nice easy parking. And we manifest that. And then we get to the store and there's a nice parking space exactly where you wanted it, more or less. Or someone pulls out just at the perfect time and you think, oh, thank you, and you drive in. So we know that happens. You then get out of your car and you go into the shop. At the point in which you enter the shop, the outside world, because you're not observing it, no longer exists for you. But because there's people outside, in their reality, and they've, say someone sat on the park bench and they've watched you pull up in the car, got out the car and gone into the shop. In that part of his reality, of the consciousness, of the collective consciousness, that car's there still, and it physically is there. But for you, with your single consciousness within the collective consciousness, you know the car's there, but if nobody had actually was observing the car wouldn't physically be there until you came out, because you expect the car to be there. But there'll be a ghost program, a program of the fact that it's happened, because you've physically driven there and seen it happen. So you've created that reality tunnel. So we create something called a reality tunnel of matter, of thought, of understanding, that when we come out, the matrix understands that reality tunnel was created and replicates it straight again, like the holographic thing in Star Trek. And you then get back into the car and you drive away, and everything feels physical and everything is as you would expect it to be. But as soon as you've left that store, if there was nobody else in that store at all, no cameras on, nothing visualizing, or nobody watching or interacting with that store, the inside of that store building would no longer exist, only the outside, until somebody then walked into it and we would then create the store again. I hope this is making sense. So there's an old, and this sticks to me from being a kid, and I don't know why, but it always stuck with me, and I was never happy with the answer. And it's like a mind question, if you want. So if a tree that's in a forest falls over and there's nobody there to observe it, does the tree make a noise? So you've got a tree inside a wood that falls down. Say in the wind, there's a strong wind, and a tree falls down in the forest due to the wind. But there's nobody there to observe that tree falling down. Did the tree make a noise? Well, no. There was no noise because there was no tree. The tree only existed when somebody observed it. And so part of the program of the Matrix would be that a tree that gets hit by a wind of a certain strength can be blown down. And this is a knowing. So this is part of the collective consciousness. So the collective consciousness has been programmed and told that when the wind gets to a certain speed, a tree with shallow roots will fall over. So the next day, you could walk that forest every day. So the next day you go out in the morning when the wind's dropped, and you're walking along, and there's this big old tree that's laying on the ground that wasn't there yesterday, laying on the ground, it's upright. And you think, oh, the wind must have blown that over. But it wasn't observed by anybody. And so, was that just part of the computer program creating that reality, or that realism of the knowing, of the expectation of what would happen because you've told so? So in actual fact, did you create the tree falling down in the first place via your reality tunnel and the manifestation of knowing that when things happen at a certain speed, wind-wise, that certain things happen? Because if you didn't know that and you didn't expect that, then would the tree have fallen down in the first place? I know, it's absolutely mind-blowing. But to get your head around this and understand it is a key part of understanding the realm. And so when we go back to the double-slit experiment again, matter, particles, can be every single state available or no states at all. It can be everything and nothing, all at the same time. And when the experiment was observed, the matter changed and reacted to how the observer expected to see it. And when the experiment was run when nobody was looking at it, it created a wave interference pattern that had all possibilities. And that is what we observe. When we observe, the particle matter creates what we expect to see from the collective consciousness, part of the programming. And when we're not observing it, there's nothing there. Now I understand this is, this is kind of... But to understand what the realm's purpose is, in a way, what's the purpose of a game? A video game? It's to have an experience. It's to learn something. And certainly when I observe my son playing, he can go from joy of winning the game to anger and frustration at losing the game. And there'll be certain days when he plays and he's brilliant, and other days he plays and he's absolutely terrible. And he'll get angrier and angrier, more frustrated, and he'll shout and scream, and all the emotional energy that will come out of him in that respect. And so what's the purpose of this realm? because I think it's to enable us, a fractal of source, a fractal of the creator, to grow and develop and have an experience. But understanding that the realm doesn't actually really exist, and you're inside a computer game, a matrix, a consciousness, a toroidal field of consciousness, creating a reality via all these individuals creating their own reality tunnel with the same base programming, same base kind of understanding. And see, this is where Maten and Platonic planes comes in with our lightning thrice. He's looked at and understands fully human design and astrology and how the two interlink with each other. But fundamentally, human design, as in human design, is how that human is designed to react and act and see the world within the basis or the confines of the program. Because if we were all the same, we'd all have the same experience. So there has to be some kind of subtle difference where we can observe something in a very similar way or understand something in a very similar way, but all from our own viewpoint, our own individuality, our own reality tunnel that also fits in within a spectrum, a spectrum of where we are within that spectrum of understanding, because it's a program and there's limits to the program each side. And so the human design means that depending on what energy center you have and what gate could affect how you react to certain stimuli. And so somebody might laugh at something when somebody could cry at something, just an example, and they would laugh not because they're callous in any way, but because their human design program does not allow them to process that in any other way, so they go to their default programming. And somebody might cry because they understand exactly what's going on and it's upset them, and they could also be upset because the person's laughing, but in actual fact that's their programming, and they were always programmed to react in that way. We have subtle layers, we have layer upon layer upon layer of programming in this consciousness realm, this matrix, to create a realm for us to learn, grow, experiment in. The creator, or the consciousness that created this, is an infinite immortal being, and it can't die. So what better way to grow and develop than by creating consciousness, a toroidal field, a realm that's locked into itself, where there can be no overspill into anything else, where anything can be introduced to observe your own self as a fractal of yourself, having an experience where you feel pain, shame, fear, gluttony, all of that. But you also feel love, empathy, joy, happiness. Love. You see the darkness and you see the light. And it gives you that fractal of source, the opportunity to spiritually grow and develop into something else. And everybody watching this, and if you've got all the way through to this, you are growing and developing into something else, just like the butterfly did. And we're at the pupa stage at the moment, and we will be breaking out very soon. And when we do, things will change, because our energy, our consciousness, our frequency will not match that of the 3D realm. And we would have learnt and grown and leveled up in the computer game. So, what's this realm's purpose? It's for us to grow and develop and have experiences with the illusion of death at the end of it. The jeopardy of, but in reality there is no death. You just move from one reality to another reality, one frequency to another frequency. There is no death. So I hope that is interesting, and I hope it's not too mind-blowing regarding what's behind you, because if you can't see what's behind you, there isn't anything behind you. I'll give you a little tangent story on this one. I was walking through the city of Norwich in the UK, very old city, and I was having this conversation with my son. This is several years ago now, 3-4 years ago. And there were all these people running around with masks on and all the stupidity that was going on at that point. And I was just telling him that none of it was real. I said, and even these buildings aren't real. And I was explaining what I'm trying to explain to you. And as I'm walking down explaining this and getting more and more into this, I noticed that the buildings were starting to wave and shimmer. And I thought, yeah, I think I need to stop now. Because I was actually almost challenging the matrix, and because I truly believed, and I truly do believe is not the right word, know. Because I know these things. It's a knowing. It's an is. I was then creating a reality tunnel for myself where my knowing was actually making the buildings no longer solid, but shimmering like a computer game. And with that one, I'm going to leave you. Please like, share and subscribe. I really do appreciate, as I said before, all your support. Thank you very much, everybody, and especially for all the wonderful and lovely comments you leave. I really am appreciative of it. It's, my channel's growing steadily, and I really am grateful for that. So there'll be more about this kind of thing coming out in the next few days for sure. I have many subcategories. They all kind of link into each other, but they're all different as well. And so I think this one is one that needed to be said, because if you start looking at the Chris Code Fibonacci sequence and the double slot experiment videos I've done, hopefully that will start tying things up a bit to really understanding the importance of the double slit and what is. Actually, before I leave, I'm going to go on another tangent, because I do think this is a very interesting one, and it's to do with the double slit, because you might not be able to quite get your head round that matter can be everything and nothing all at the same time. Okay. And I have mentioned this experiment before, and I did say the name wrong because of my dyslexia. But it's Schrodinger's Schrodinger's cat, not Schrodinger's, but Schrodinger's cat. It's a Stro with a D, not an L. So, but I'm going to call it Schrodinger's cat because that's the only way I can say it. But it's Schrodinger's cat experiment. And he was a very interesting physicist who did a very interesting waveform analysis, which really does fit in very nicely with the Chris code and the double slit as well. But we're interested in his cat experiment or thought experiment. Now remember, this was never done. This is a thought experiment, okay? So the thought experiment is, and I'm sure I've explained it to you before, and I do apologise if I'm repeating myself, but to now understand the experiment and how it relates to atomic material, atoms, protons, and how we see things, and the tree one that I'm talking about, this kind of links in again, okay? So there's got a box, and within the box is a vial of poison, and this vial of poison is decaying the glass, and it can break at any time. So they put a cat inside the box and they sealed the box. So while the cat's inside the box and can't be observed, again you can't see it, the cat is both alive and dead at the same time. So just like the double slot, the matter was both active and inactive at the same time. It had all possibilities and no possibilities. Just like the cat could be alive and have all possibilities. Well, the cat could be dead and have no possibilities. And it's only at the point in which you open the lid of the box again, you see if the cat's alive or dead. But while it's in the box, sealed up with that vial of poison, all possibilities are open for the cat. Now, I hope that kind of makes sense. And again, it's another one just to look up. I'm sure there's nice little videos about it explaining it. But this is a very, very simplistic way of looking at it. So when you can't see the cat, and the cat's got jeopardy, it can be alive and dead at the same time. But when you open the box, you then know because you're seeing. And the program will then decide. But you also have a bearing on that, because if you really want that cat to be alive and you're really wishing that the vial hasn't done, and you're showing the emotional and going through the manifestation stages, then what will happen is that cat will be alive. And if you leave it to fate and have no feelings either way, then when you open the box, it will be up to the realm, the reality of, because the reality of the realm is probably more interested in your emotional response and how you're going to react to whether the cat's alive or dead. And at that point, if the higher self experience requires grief, you know what the cat will be, and the emotional response of the higher self requires release of, phew, you know what the response, what state the cat will be in. And so it's a very, very layered, multi-dimensional system, but can be broken down in a very simple way. So I hope that makes sense, and I'm going to stop babbling now. So thank you very much everybody for watching, and I'll catch you up with you guys very, very soon. Bye.